All right. Welcome everybody. It's Dave again, and I got another project, and I'm hoping it's entertaining. Anyway, so yeah, obviously you see I've got another RC project. So I am going to attempt, this one's going to be a little different than the other one. The other one I was building specifically for someone. And let's get all this out the way here. I was building specifically for someone. And so it was kind of hemmed in. Mind my screeching chair. But you guys have watched enough of my videos. Speaking of which, I want to welcome all my new subscribers. I don't beg for subscriptions. I'm not getting paid. Everything you see here was paid for with my own money. So I tend to, when I have projects like this, I tend to buy these over a period of time. Buy the stuff little bits at a time. Because especially with RC type stuff, but even in real life, if you're restoring a car or whatever, you know, and you're buying everything aftermarket, which is what I'm doing, buying everything aftermarket. You tend to spend more, so just keep that in mind. If you're wanting to build something specific and you want to use specific parts and do a specific thing for a specific build, and this gives you the freedom of mixing and matching and getting the parts on there that you want and not having to work around, if you've got a ready to run and you're just upgrading, that's different. But if you're wanting to build something specific, or at least something in, somewhere you want to do something different. And that's kind of what this is. My other one, the Hummer build was a specific, I was basically just upgrading that Mattrax Hummer, and it was a gift for somebody. So that's why I did that, and that's why it was kind of the way it was. But on this one, I want to do some different things. I want to use different parts, try different things, which is what I got here. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this, and as we get going, I'll talk about it. But I got a cantilever system, cantilever suspension for the rear here. And I'm trying it as opposed to like your standard suspension. This one isn't really going to be a crawler. It's going to be kind of I don't know. I'm still working on that. Right now I've just got the frame and suspension going. I've got other things that I'm working on and other things that I'm going to add to this. So this is going to be kind of a Frankenstein type of thing, I guess you could say. But like I said, I'm trying different suspensions. Like instead of the big coilovers like you see here, and camera, see the big coilovers like that. And I'm going with the type of shock they call. They're an internal spring shock dampener. Is what they are. So they're still, just as good as the coilovers, I guess. I mean, everybody has their opinions. But instead of having the big bulky spring on the outside, they've got the spring on the inside. But it's still a shock dampener, and you still put oil in them if that's what you want to do. But they've got a internal spring. Oh, well, I guess, see, I don't know that much about these. So it's a learning curve. But anyway, they've got the springs on the inside of, kind of like your shocks on your car. I mean, if they have anything, it's on the inside. as opposed to the coil overs. The coil, you can call them the coil inners or unders or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, these here, and there you go, come apart. But anyway, so yeah, so as you can see, the springs are on the inside. And just like the coil overs, you get different spring hardnesses, you know, for different types of yeah, I know I'm trying, this lighting is just still working on the lighting, but anyway, so yeah, like I said, so that's what I'm working on. I'm gonna work with these internal spring shock dampeners and the cantilever system, which is kind of cool, I think. A lot of those, not in real life, but a lot of those racing monster trucks that you see, they have racing scale monster trucks. They do exactly the same thing as the full-size monster trucks. They go through a course, jump over stuff, blah, 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 and a lot of them use a cantilever on front and back. So that's, like I said, this is one thing I'm going to try. I'm going to have these type of shocks probably on the front because there's not much, and I'm going to try a dual shock setup on the front. And like I said, I've got things that I want to do with this particular vehicle, and that's, you know, a little different than what most people do. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be a 4-link suspension, but I opted for these type of things for the lower links, front and back, because it gives you these holes. It gives you these holes that you can mount shocks or other things. It gives you some extra spaces you can mount shocks in a different area or whatever. And part of the reason is I'm going to be doing, where did I put that? It's up here. I'm going to be doing at the very least on the rear, again with the cantilever and the I'm going to try doing a sway bar. So I've got a couple of different sway bars, or types of sway bars, you know, that I'm trying to think how I'm going to use, or if I'm going to use. Probably going to go with this one because it's got the straight rod. Now this one here, this one has two different, you know, thicknesses of rod, but they're just rod, okay? And this one, it's got the rod that curves down and goes down the arm, as opposed to just a rod across the top. And these are a bit too wide for my purposes, but I got these. I was thinking of doing some things, and you know, you never know. But anyway, sway bar. That's my plan. I'm going to do a sway bar on this, or I'm going to attempt to do a sway bar on this. And but these rods are a tiny bit too long. And like I said, there's a couple of different thicknesses. It's hard to tell, but this one's thicker. This one's thicker than this one, obviously, and it's going to be stiffer, and depending on what you're going to do. But what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this one down, or cut whichever one I decide to use. I'm going to have to cut them down because they're just a tiny bit too wide. I'll have to cut them down just a bit. And then this one has, I don't know if you can see, it's got a flat edge on, you know, on the ends here. And that's what these other parts, they lock on there, and that's what, you know, but so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this down to determine how long I want it, cut it down, and then grind a flat spot so that it hooks up the way it's supposed to. But these are my plans. These are my plans, and these are things I don't know if they're going to work. I don't know if they're going to work and do what I want them to do, but I've got things that I want to try. And like I said, the other one was a specific built deal, so I just used coilovers and, you know, stuff like that. But this time I'm gonna go with these ones, and they're a little bit shorter. These are 90 millimeter. These are 90 millimeter shocks. The shocks I used on the Hummer build were 120 millimeter. So these aren't nearly as long, and it's not going to be quite as stout, because I want this to have a more normal four-wheel drive ride height if I can. And so yeah, I don't even know why I got those back there, because I'm probably not going to use them, you know. And these shocks here that come with the cantilever, these are an 80 millimeter coilover, and I'm deciding whether I'm going to mount them on the inside of the rear here, the inside or the outside. I mean, it's designed to be, you know, basically be on, you know, on the outside, but you can, with a little tiny bit of modification to the actual frame, you can run them on the inside, because I saw a kid on YouTube has the same exact cantilever type setup. This is from Injora or Inhora. I don't know how you fucking say it. Oh, sorry, excuse my language. I don't know how you say it. Sorry, kids, I do swear sometimes. But anyway, that's my plan, is get this together. I've got a whole new set of axles. This time I went with a different Amazon brand. They're not a known brand, but these ones are all metal. The ones I used on the Hummer were, I don't know, it's plastic, but it's like, I don't know, nylon or something, I don't know. And but these ones are all metal. So every last one of these screws I have to Loctite. So I got to take them apart, Loctite them. And you know, and then you got to do your normal, put grease in here. And that brings me to another thing that I learned from building that, is Loctite. Well, at least, I mean, I got the blue Loctite, you know, and it works. It does exactly. But this formula, or this batch of the Loctite, was water thin. And I don't know if all Loctite is water thin or not, but it was water thin, and I spilled more than I used on the last one. So I decided to use a syringe, and I got the syringe full of Loctite, and you know, like, that way I can dispense the amount that I need. And we'll see how that works out, because I was spilling it and wasting it, and it was just generally a pain in my ass. And so we're going to see how that works out, because trying to pour it out of this tube onto a fucking screw, and then it just all over the place because it's so freaking thin, or at least this formula, or this batch of this Loctite. But I mean, it worked. I mean, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was just super thin, and I don't know if that's normal or not. So we're going to do that. And then with the grease, for like greasing the axles and whatnot, I did the same thing. I put it in a freaking syringe, that way I can just kind of squirt out a little bit and spread it around in there, and you know, whatever. So we're gonna see how these work out. But so anyway, that's my plan for this. I've still got parts coming. I wanted to start with the suspension, because that's gonna be the biggest factor on which direction this goes. So it's going to be a truck. It's going to be four-wheel drive, obviously. I got transmission. I went different with a different transmission, and you'll see that later on. But and let's see, the brand, the frame, the bumper, the front and rear bumper mounts, the cross member, the skid plate, is all LCX. They're all LCX. Let's see. Yeah. The frame, it's all, and this frame was $15. It's a SCX2 or SCX10 frame. It's the clone of the Axial frame, which you can get the Axial frame on the Axial website. $15, $50 on the Axial website. But, aftermarket is the way we go if you want to not spend $1,000. But, that was the other thing too, that if the ready to run kits are awesome, but they are expensive depending on what size, what scale you're going and so forth and so on. If you're going to do this route, you're going to spend more. Okay, if you're worried about how much you're going to spend to get the crawler or whatever, the ones they show on the commercials, and there's those ready to run kits are awesome, both the Axial and the Traxxas and the various other ones. They're awesome, but you get what they build. Now if that's what you want, hey, good to go. But if they all have upgrade parts, and there's all aftermarket parts all over Amazon and a lot of your other hobby websites and hobby shops, that you can buy for even the ready to run kits. So that's good. But the stuff, some things are expensive, like these axles were $120. Now I imagine that's probably small beans compared to other things, but whatever. 120. I paid $100 for those Muse axles. For the other kit. Now these were 120, but these were all metal, and the Muse axles were not. But yeah, if you're wanting a certain type of vehicle, but you don't really want to spend any money, you'd be better off buying a ready to run kit and then upgrading it to where you want it. But if you're doing like I'm doing, where I'm trying to build something, use axles from this and not be all it, you're going to spend more this way in the long run. But if you do it the way I do, and you just buy a little bit here, buy a couple things every payday, it's going to take you a while to gather up all the parts, but you're not breaking the bank in one installment. So yeah, you're going to spend more this way, but you get the option of having the parts and doing the things that you want to do. Things that you want to use, the type of axle you want to use, or the type of links you want to use, or the type of frame you want to use, or whatever. You have that option. There's 10,000 different types of shock towers out there on Amazon. All kinds of different cross members, all kinds of different axles, all kinds of different shocks. So if you want a specific brand of shock or whatever, which you can do that to the ready to run kits too. But at least with the ready to run kits, you're starting with a running platform. You bash it, tear it up, and you find out where it's weak, and then you put what you want on there, and you're good to go. With this here, you build it as you go. You use the parts you want, and it's just what you want to do. It's just whatever you want to do. I like building stuff. Okay, I don't like things already done, because it's like, okay. But I like to build stuff. I don't mind taking the time to put something together and build it. So that's where I'm going with this. The ready to run, if you're wanting to plunk down your money and get your vehicle and go out and bash it and have fun, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, when you've run it long enough and you realize, well, it's a little weak here, or it needs a little there, or different gears or different suspension or whatever from the aside from the factory stuff, then good to go. But if I want to build it this way, I want it to have this frame, and I want it to have this skid plate, and I want to have these axles, and I want to have these shocks, and I want to do it this way or that way, you can build it as you go. So anyway, that being said, we are going to get started on this. I'm just going to go along and do a few things, and then whatnot, and try to figure out where I'm going with this. So with the LCX, or at least what I found here, you get the frame, you get all the screws. Okay, with the LCX stuff, because the skid plate did not come with screws. The cross member did not come with screws. The front and rear bumpers did not come with screws, but the frame did. So, the frame, like I said, it's all the same company, and so yeah. Trying to figure out if I want to start with grease, because you got to grease these. Obviously there probably is grease in them, but you got to grease them, and you've got to freaking take all the screws out and put them back in and Loctite them back in. Okay, because they don't Loctite them at the factory most times. I'm not saying none of them do, but most times they don't. So, but I mean, you got to take this cover off anyway to grease them, so you can take them screws out, because everything's replaceable. You know, I could turn, with a few aftermarket parts, I can turn this axle from a rear axle to a steer axle, you know, because all of these parts come off, even the axle tubes come off and everything else. But yeah, you just got to take all the screws out, Loctite them, put them back together, and but you got to grease them too. So anyway, that being said, I get to rambling. You guys know me better, know me enough for that. You get to rambling, but oh, and these are high pinion too. I just learned that. I was watching some off-roading stuff in high pinion for clearance, but that's not why I bought them. I bought them because they were metal, and I wanted something a little wider. These are a lot wider too. These axles are a lot wider than the Muse axles that I put on the Hummer. So I'm hoping some a little more clearance, a little better clearance for fat tires if I decide to put fat tires on it. But anyway, just to have more clearance in there, because that thing was, but like I said, I specifically built that one for somebody as a gift, and they love it, by the way. They're happy as could be, and it's been working pretty good. Only had one little thing, because I forgot to Loctite the servo horn on the rear steer, and obviously it came loose, so I had to re-Loctite it. But other than that, it's done pretty good. Now, this person isn't as hard on it as some folks might be, but it's perfectly capable. But anyway, I'm rambling again. So anyway, just hang tight, and we will move on with this build. All right, welcome back. Well, as you can see, I've gotten quite a bit done. This is pretty much everything I had shown you earlier. Got my axle and got everything on there. Okay, got everything on there. Got the cantilever system. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, it does this, you know, these were actually, according to the instructions, mounted on the outside of the frame, which, you know, that's fine. But you know, these big coilovers take up a lot of space, and I'm not quite sure yet. I'm still not quite sure if this is the route I'm going to go, at least with the rear end. But this is what I was looking at. So I got as you can see, I got the cantilevers on there, and that's just basically these arms here. So I moved them to the inside of the frame. I didn't have to drill anything or modify anything. All the holes were there. I just had to move the cross member down, because, you know, this is where the cross member normally sits, is right here. And that was the other thing. And then I see, this is the other reason why I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm going to do it this way or not. Because see, with these on the outside, I can use the bumper. Because it uses one of the screws that hold the bumper into the frame. But with them on the inside, I had room for the torsion bar, or anti-sway bar, excuse me. Anti-sway bar right here. Which, you know, I already had this in my thing, so it wasn't something new that I bought. But, you know, again, I did not have to drill any new holes. I didn't have to modify anything. Just had to, you know, nix the bumper and move the cross member. But all of the holes in the frame are all original. I didn't have to do anything. Like, in fact, these holes here are the mounting holes for the cross member. The 2 holes for this little plate that you get here. Let's see. That's just what happens when you get everything black. Okay. Yeah, this little plate right here is part of the cantilever system. But I mean, it works. You know, the sway bar isn't, I mean, it's not really part of the suspension as in, you know, the ride. It is exactly what it's supposed to be. It keeps, you know, the body from swaying and whatnot. And so yeah. But yeah, this is what I spent a lot of time working on, and these are all the parts that I showed you yesterday. I have a couple of plans in mind. That's why I was looking at the cantilever system for the back as opposed to the regular shock tower type setup back here, because there was a couple of things I was, you know, and the big shock tower would get in the way. Well, the cantilever, as you can see, hides it in the frame pretty good. I mean, it hides it in the frame pretty good. So this might be an idea if anybody's got some, you know, they obviously you need a rear suspension, but if your particular build or whatever you're doing doesn't have room, or, you know, you have something else that's going to be in the way of your rear shock towers or your shock mounts, you might want to check out these cantilever systems. I think this thing was like, this whole kit, not the sway bar, but this whole kit, the cantilever kit, was like, I think it was like $30 on Amazon. And there's, just like everything else that comes from China, there's 15 different suppliers that carry these. So you go on Amazon, you can go into, you know, some of the online hobby sites and you'll find them, and it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It actually comes with a couple of bearings here in the pivot point. So that's not bushings in there, and that's bearings. So right in this pivot point right here. It's hard to see, but you know, right there where that bolt is right there. And so anyway, but this is the setup. I went with these lower links because I thought they were just cool as shit looking. And it gives you these holes in case you have something else that you want to mount. It gives you these holes where with the regular link you can't. But even if I don't use the holes for anything, I think they just look cool as shit on here, especially in contrast with the black frame. Yeah, I'm not totally sure about the Panhard bar, because the only other thing, I mean, I know what it's for is to keep, you know, if you go with a 3-link front end with the Panhard or track link, whatever you want to call it, which comes from this side here and goes down to this, because they've got the mount on the axle itself for the Panhard if you want to go that route. But the thing with the Panhard is if you go that route, you can't use the axle mounted servos. You have to go with the frame mounted servo. But luckily, if you buy a lot of these aftermarket things, they come equipped with the frame mount setup ready to go anyway. But yeah, so this I'm just kind of showing you. This took me a while, man, because there's no instructions that come with this. No instructions. There are a couple of videos out there on YouTube that kind of walk you through it, but there's no instruction videos. I'll put this guy. It looks pretty self-explanatory, and now that I know how it goes together, it's not that hard. But you know, and then taking the time to figure out how I swap it from the outside of the frame to the inside of the frame and still get the same you know, travel out of it. I think it actually did a little bit better on the inside because it lined up these connecting rods, or these links, to the axle a little bit better. But yeah, and but so anyway, this is where I'm at right now. There's a couple things I still want to do. Like I said, I'm not 100% if I'm going to go this route or not. With the sway bar and the cantilever shock system, because the sway bar I'll have to, if I nix the cantilever system, I gotta nix the sway bars, because if I go with the regular shock towers, then it'll get in the way. I don't know, it may or may not, but it'll get in the way of the sway bar. But you can do it. I mean, if this is the route you want to go and you think this is pretty cool, then you know, this is obviously the SCX10 frame, which, speaking of which, now earlier when I was talking about the price of the frame, you know, this was $15 on Amazon. $15. It's an LCX brand. You know, LCX. Anyway, LCX brand, but it is aftermarket frame based on the Axial SCX10 frame, which you can get from the Axial website. And like I said, they're about $50. So I'm like, $15 for $50. But I did have to go in and drill the holes out just a tiny bit bigger. They're all in the same spot. They're just one size larger than they were originally, because these bolts here that went along the skid plate, they bolted the skid plate to the frame and the frame to the link mounts here on the end. They were just off, just a fuzz off. You know what I mean? So I went with just one size larger, used the same size screws that they originally called for, and you know, because it just wouldn't sit in there right, because the holes. And this was the only place I had any problem with. I mean, even up here, the bumper and the rear bumper mount, I didn't have any problems. The you know, the cross member, I had no problems. Just right here in this spot here, it was just a fuzz off. So I just had to drill the holes a little bit bigger, one size bigger than they were, you know. And then I went ahead and went in there and chased all these threads, the skid plate threads. If you get you those little tiny, and I know I've talked about this before, especially with this Chinese aftermarket stuff, you get you some little micro mini taps. All right, little taps, little tiny taps, and it comes with a, you know, a handle. But yeah, you get these little things, and these are all metric, because most of the stuff coming from China is metric. But anyway, you chase the threads out in some of these things. I had the bumpers that I had on the Hummer build that I did. The bumpers, yeah, and I talk about the bumpers in that video too, by the way. And I didn't have these at that time, and it was a hassle, because the screws, you know, because they drill the holes obviously before they powder coat them, and then they get powder coat all down into the holes, the threaded holes, and it's all aluminum, and you know how good aluminum is as far as that goes. But yeah, get you some of these taps. I got these on Amazon. They weren't nothing, you know. I think they have little micro mini die sets too, but I haven't had a need for that yet. But definitely the tap, especially if you're gonna do some stuff, whether it be RC stuff or. But anyway, so I've got parts coming to continue the build, and like I said, I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this yet. If I'm going to keep it on there, or if I'm just going to set it aside and maybe use it on something else later on. But now I know how it works and that it does work, and it does actually work pretty good. These are all shock. These shocks are all oil-filled coilovers. So I use the Losi shock oil, and it's the 50 weight, which is fairly thick, but it's not super thick. I thought back in the day they've had the shock oil and the oil-filled shocks out for decades, and I thought, hell, that you just put oil in, or motor, whether it be motor oil or 3-in-1 oil or whatever. But now they've got different thicknesses for obvious reasons. But these RCs nowadays are a little more performance oriented than they used to be. And but yeah, so like I said, I love building stuff, and I love being able to buy the things that I want and see how they work, and then. But if you go this route, just be prepared. And I would suggest, if you go this route, a complete 100% custom build based on either the Axial or the Traxxas setups, I would suggest, unless you have a good paying job, or you won the lottery or got an inheritance or something like that, just buy a few things every payday. Because I mean, most of the stuff individually, like these were $30 for the whole thing. The axles were expensive, but axles are going to be expensive. These were $120. Your motor and some other things, like my transmission, I think was $20-some. I can't remember what my transmission is. It's on the way. I'm waiting on it, get my transmission mounted. But anyway, most of the stuff might cost you 10 or 12 bucks individually. But if you add up all the parts that you need, or all the parts that you're going to use to put on these things, it's going to be expensive. Okay? It's going to be expensive. But it's 100% custom. So it's everything that if you were a manufacturer, this is what you want to use. Or this is how you want to set up, whatever. The ready-to-run kits, yes, they are expensive. They are expensive too. But this is one of those things where, like I said earlier, if you're wanting to build something, take your time, put things on, see how they work, whether they don't work, or whether you're sure this is how you want it, or if you said, not sure yet, because I'm definitely not sure, but I wanted to do it to see, and like I said, and the only reason that I may not use it is because one of the idea options that I was thinking about with this particular build is going to need this space right here. Like I said, I could put these back on the outside, which is where they started, on the outside, and keep the cantilevers set up, or put the shock tower back on. Because I've got an extra set of shocks, oil-filled spring. I don't think I didn't put any oil in these. I don't think. Pretty sure I didn't. But yeah, these are also oil-filled. Yeah, no. And so. But these you get pretty much the same performance You do get different spring tensions and thicknesses, and just like you do with the coilovers, you get more than one spring combination. But these take up so much less space than the coilover side. I mean, look at the size difference here. It's even. I mean, if you got rid of the spring altogether on the outside, these shocks are still lower or smaller profile than the internal spring shocks. So, but yeah, like I said, I may or may not stick with this. I may put these back on the outside of the frame. Just depends on what I'm gonna do. But the sway bar was just kind of one of those. I wonder. I mean, I like this setup. I actually do. But it's just I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do in total with this build. I already have a shell, God, that's the other thing. The body shells, the hard plastic ones, you're spending over $100 for those. The hard plastic body shells, you're spending over $100. Unless there's some places out there, if you have a 3D printer, that you can buy the plans and 3D print your own shell, which I don't have a 3D printer, but that's also an option. And then the Lexan ones, you could pick up a Lexan shell back in the day for $10-$20, depending on where you buy it. But yeah, you're not even gonna get a Lexan body for less than $30. And that's just vacuum formed. That's just a vacuum formed body, And you know how durable those Lexan. I mean, they're durable, but I mean, compared to a hard shell body. But anyway, so just showing my progress, and I do really like these. They're cool. They do have function beyond just being cool looking. I mean, there's other things you can, because these holes are drilled. They're for looks, but they're also usable if you find a use for them. But aside from that, that's my progress. I'm waiting on a few more parts. And I'm going to be tinkering with this a little bit, just trying to decide which route I'm going to go with this. So we'll see. But these things are cool. I mean, if I don't use them on this build, this might come in handy somewhere else along the line. But yeah. So the next time you'll see, I'll have some more stuff to do, or more stuff done. We'll see what happens. But I haven't even named this build yet. This is just I might end up naming it later, but when I've finalized what I'm actually going to do with it. But yeah, there's a lot of things I wanted. So this one is going to be a process. It's going to be, I'm going to take my time, because I got to wait on parts to come in, obviously. And then I'm still deciding what I'm going to do beyond just, But anyway, so stay tuned, and we'll go through this together. All right. All right, so we are back. Been tinkering. That's why I like doing these things, because it gives me something to tinker with, changing things. The other reason that I like doing, 100% custom, is not only is it going to be a kind of a one-off, not based on anything specific, just using the Axial SCX10 compatible things, but I can do stuff. I can change things. I can see what works, what doesn't work. So anyway, so I wanted to do, that was the other thing, is I wanted to do a dual shock setup. And it's kind of hard to find a specific dual shock mount setup, at least as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there was one on the Axial website, but it was designed for something else completely. I mean, I might have been able to get it to work, but you know, when you get things off the main websites, they tend to be expensive. So what I did, I started off with these things first. And you can just, these are designed to, you can bolt them right onto the shock towers and give you some extra. The holes here, these holes right here are threaded and these are not. So it gives you a couple different options that you can, thread stuff into them, or you can use a nut and a bolt. And they're pretty cool. They weren't quite what I was looking for, because I was trying to mount them up on these shock towers that I got. I like these shock towers. So what I ended up getting were these things. I found these little doodads on Amazon, and you get a set of 4, obviously. And what it does is it gives you some extra mounting options with, just different things. And, you get 2 of these ones here. None of these are threaded. But you get some different options here with the slotted holes and the regular holes. Same with this one. You get some different options with slotted holes, regular holes, and in different spots. So, keeping that in mind, I came up with this. Using the long ones down here. What I did is I took the shock things off the bottom of these. Let me see here. I got some more shock. So right now I've just got the dual shock system on the front shocks, okay? And so I'm trying it out, see how it works, doing different things. But I've got more shocks. I've got another set of shocks, the same type, and these are oil filled, but they're the internal spring type shocks. Here's what I was looking for. Stupid thing. Anyway, so what I did is I took the bottoms off the 2 shocks here, and used that long piece, this piece here. And I actually didn't make this up my own. I did see this particular idea from another YouTuber. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he made these things he had different shock towers that were wide enough that he could do the dual shocks up here, but he had to do something down on the axle, and he cut out metal pieces and drilled holes and whatnot. But what I did, if you could see, is I took one of the shock bottoms off of these shocks, screwed it in, screwed it in pretty much in the middle. I mean, it doesn't look it, but they are pretty much even. I screwed it in, and then I screwed in the here we go. I screwed the posts in and put a little nut on the bottom of them. And that's what I mounted on there. All right, and then I took this part here, And if you can see, we get the right angle here. There it is. That's what happens when you do everything in black. So, and I mounted it up there, and I basically just turned it, let's see here, like this. And these shock towers, as you know, are threaded. So and these are not threaded at all. So I just ran a screw through one, and then Bob's your uncle, I've got a dual shock mount, and it works pretty good. I obviously haven't had a chance to take it outside and do any work. But oh, the other thing is the dual shocks here. The front one has the internal spring in it, and it's got oil, so it's got it's got the internal spring and the shock oil in there for the dampening effect. The rear one here it has no spring with just the shock oil. And I think I showed you earlier, I used this Losi 50 weight shock oil. Because these vehicles being all metal, even though they are mostly aluminum, they are pretty heavy. And thicker shock oil, because a lot of those ready to run rigs are plastic. But my deal is all metal, so it's going to be kind of heavy. And I haven't even got the battery and all that in it, so I mean it's starting to get a little bit of girth to it. So yeah, that's what I've done on the front so far. I got the fronts, got my dual shock set up, and I've got enough parts that if I decide to put it on the rear too, I will. But I'm going to try this cantilever system out on the rear, just like I showed earlier. Now I went ahead and, because these shocks here are fine, but they're not very strong. The springs on them aren't very strong, and I'm still tinkering with that. You get a couple you didn't get any extra springs with these like you would a normal. You only had the spring that it came with. You don't get any extra springs like you would if you bought normal shocks. So what I did is I got some more shocks. Now these are 90 millimeter shocks still on the Hummer build that I did. Sometimes my brain checks out. I put 120s, and for that vehicle and the person I built it for, they love it. They love it all sitting up in the air and really high, whatever. That's fine, and it looks good. I like the way it looks too. But for this one, I wanted to go with like these are, like I said, these are 90 millimeters here. The rear here, these are 80 millimeters, and that's what the original shocks were 80 millimeters. So I got a set of the exact same style of shock that I've got on the front there. Come here. The exact same style of shock that I've got on the fronts here. And I just got them for this. And that way you get 3 springs. They come with a black spring, you get a silver spring, which has got a little more tension, and then the gold spring are really, really tensioned up. I mean, they're real. I tried the gold spring, and the gold spring is too much for this setup that I've got going on here. So yeah, and like I said, and these are filled with shock oil, just like the front ones, and they got the black spring, which is the ones they come with, which are the softest spring that these come with. So I'm waiting to get, once I get it out there and start running it, I'll decide whether. But I like the cantilever setup because, like I said earlier, I might have something going on with the body later on that the big shock towers sticking up are just going to get in the way. So we'll see how it works once I get the tires and wheels, because it's going to have a dually. It's going to be dual tires, dual wheels. I did get the wheels in. I'm still waiting on the tires because the USPS, you know, keeping in line with their abilities and whatnot, that, you know, I was supposed to have my tires in today, and yeah, they're not going to make it today. God dang it. I just had these out the other day, and all of a sudden they don't want to come out. All right, so, and these are the wheels that I've got for this. And these wheels are designed to be duals. You don't have to, it comes with its adapter already. They come right from the factory with the adapter all ready to go. So you don't have to buy any special kind of adapter, because these are promoted as dual, you know, dual wheeled rims. But you can use them as singles, obviously. And I got two sets of these. That way I have all four of my wheels are matching. So, and I got them on Amazon. And the only other, and these, like I said, these rims are designed to be dual. You don't have to. They can be singles, but they are designed to be dual wheels. The only other ones I could find were on, God, which website was that? I want to say RC 4-wheel drive, or maybe I don't know. But one of the websites, I'm drawing a blank right now, that were designed, and they look like the rims from an you know, a big rig, a big truck, and they were designed to be duals. And for a set of those, and you get the 6 of them all together, you get the 6 of them, and they are like $130. They're aluminum. You know, you get 6 wheels, 2 or 4 of them, you know, for duals, whatever. And they're super nice. They look like I said, they look like semi wheels. And but I got 6 of those for like $70 on Amazon. And they're designed to be put together as duals as well. So yeah, this is my deal here. I've got my cantilever set up here, and I got my sway bar inside there. Yes, it's different from the last, you know, from earlier in the video, because I've been farting around. Like I said, I wanted to change the shocks for the cantilever. And I moved things around because I decided to go ahead and put the cantilever back on the outside instead of on the inside where I had them earlier. And so which basically I put the cantilevers on the outside and I put the sway bar on the inside. So yeah, and like I said, that's what I'm going to be going with for now. Yeah, and I got my servo for the front steering, and oh yeah, the other thing, my skid plate. So I got my transmission. I went with this style of transmission, and it is also 4-wheel drive. It's got like a built-in, and these are like most of the rated runs that come with this type of transmission, especially the 4-wheel drive things. Not all of them, but most of them. So I ordered my skid plate and I ordered my transmission because it said center transmission skid plate for the SCX, 10, blah, blah, blah. So I bought a center transmission. And when I got the skid plate, I was like, why does the skid plate only have 2 holes in it? So I was like, well, seeing as I've never used any of these type, I didn't know how the mounting setup was. Well, the mounting setup these tires. And apparently, as I did my research, because I'm like, well, how did I order the wrong skid plate? Because maybe I just got excited and I didn't read the description well enough and so forth and so on. But no, it said exactly what I said. It says a center transmission mount skid plate. So I was like, all right. So you saw I had this all put together, and with this skid plate, and then I get my transmission in, and I'm like, yeah, I can put my transmission on now. And then I'm like, well, hell, those holes. It's, for one thing, it's only got 2 holes, which I thought was odd, but I'm like, I don't know. I've used the other style, and the other style of transmission, and with which it wouldn't have worked with that transfer case that I used in the Hummer either. But apparently, as far as center transmissions go, there's 2 different styles, or at the very least 2 different styles, or same basic style as this, but with a different mounting point. See, where this mounting plate has the 4 holes, these other ones, they're like this, generally speaking, but they mount to a plate that in turn mounts into this skid plate. So there's a big old plate that they mount on, that this type of transmission mounts on, that then in turn mounts on the skid plate, and it only has the plate only has 2 holes. So yeah, so I had to get a whole new skid plate, which Amazon is not too expensive. It was like less than $20 for the skid plate, so I just had to wait for it. But so yeah, that's where I've gotten so far. Like I said, I got my transmission in, and I'm gonna have the motor mounted in toward the rear. I'm probably gonna put my battery up here in the front, whereas on the other vehicle, the motor was up here, the motor and transmission was up here, and you had the transfer case here on the skid plate. So then I mounted my battery tray back here. Well, this time it's going to be a little different. I'm going to put the motor here instead of, and then we'll go from there. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm kind of digging it. So yeah, this is a different, like I said, this is a different setup in the front though. This one's just a dampener. There's no spring in this. It's just got the oil and the dampener in the rear there, and then in the front, I've got it's got the spring and the oil and everything else as well. And it don't seem too bad. It doesn't seem too terribly stiff. But we'll see. We'll see how it works out. I'm sure this isn't the final iteration of this either. But oh yeah, these here, I made these. It came with this other ungod awful setup. Where are those? Oh yeah, here we are. Which I guess works okay because they're adjustable, and but I didn't like them because they're just kind of cheesy looking. This is the setup that these originally were, so I took these. I had some. These are axial. What is it? 6 by 98 millimeter links from an old build that I had years and years ago. That's why they're green. I thought it was kind of cool. And I got the red diff covers, and I got the red transmission, and I got green, links there. But I made these myself. Which wasn't a big deal. I just had to cut those links down because the links are hollow. So they just cut them down and ran a tap in one side, and then threaded in the shock ends here. So this length here is if this was opened up as far as it would go without falling apart. So if I was to open this up as far as it could open up, it would be this tall. And like I said, I didn't like the way these look. They look kind of cheesy. So anywho, but yeah, I do still have the other shock towers. That if I decide that this cantilever system isn't going to work out, I've got the other shock towers, and we'll go from there. But I'm kind of digging the cantilever setup. I really am. I mean, it's got lots of travel, you know, even with the freaking, but I'm not, this isn't a rock crawler. Okay, this isn't going to be a rock crawler. This is going to be kind of just your, you know, trail rider or whatever. I mean, it'll do some rock crawling, but that is not its specific purpose. It's not its specific purpose. So it's got some travel, you know. This, I might adjust this a little bit. I might move it down a hole, you know, or whatever. But for right now, you know, it's never going to be all the way compressed. But for right now, it works. And it does have, like I said, it has some travel, and it does some flex. And with the, so yeah, I'm happy with it so far. I said I would be building my tires right now, but thanks to the good old USPS, I have to wait because it took forever to get from St. Louis to my area. Like 2 days forever just to get from St. Louis. And I could tell you some horror stories on some things that I've had ordered that I thought were lost, and they ended up showing up 3 months later. It was supposed to be a certain day, and it never showed up. You know, and their tracking is kind of a joke, because it takes forever for their tracking information to update. So yeah, but anyway, I'm rambling. So yeah, here we are so far, still working on it, still got some things going on, still waiting on some parts, and we will just continue on with this build, and hopefully it turns out cool. I think it will. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Be back later.